Okay, so today we're diving in something pretty interesting. The Oceanside, California real estate market.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at a March 2025 update from the Lewis team,
Yeah.
San Diego real estate experts.
Right.
These guys are really plugged into what's happening down there.
Yeah, definitely local experts.
And this report focuses on the activity they saw in February 2025.
Okay.
So our mission here is to break down what all these numbers really mean.
That's right.
Things like, how many houses actually sold? What prices were they selling at?
Mm-hmm.
How long were they sitting on the market?
Yeah.
And just give you a solid snapshot of, what's going on in this coastal market.
Yeah, and really make it digestible.
Yeah.
People don't want to be reading through all those reports and graphs,
Okay.
so we'll do the work for them.
So whether you're just curious about Southern California real estate, maybe thinking about making the move down there,
Mm-hmm.
or just fascinated by these real estate trends in general,
Right.
this is the deep dive for you.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get right into it.
Okay.
When we look at the overall market performance in Oceanside for February 2025,
Yeah.
what jumps out at you is the most significant trend?
I'd say the immediate thing you notice is just the increase in buyer activity.
Yeah.
Like, they had 84 homes sold in February alone.
Wow.
And to put that into perspective, that's a 12% increase from February of last year,
All right.
and an even bigger jump, a 27% increase from January of this year.
Huge.
So it seems like there's definitely growing interest in Oceanside.
Now, that's a big jump month over month. So
Mhm.
with more people wanting to buy, what happened to the prices?
Well, the median sales price for February was $910,000.
Okay.
Now, that's actually down a little bit from January,
Interesting.
but it's still 2% higher than it was in February of the previous year.
Hmm.
So even though there was a small dip from the month before,
Right.
it looks like overall property values are still going up in Oceanside.
Okay, so more sales happening and prices generally trending upwards.
Yeah.
But how fast were these houses actually selling?
Right. So the pace of sales definitely picked up.
Well,
The median days on market, which is how long a listing typically sits before it gets an offer,
right.
that went down to 30 days in February,
Okay.
which is faster than the 38 days we saw in January.
So things are moving a bit quicker now?
Yeah, exactly. But for context, in February of last year, it was only 15 days.
Oh, wow. So it's not quite as frenzied as it was.
No, not quite, but still a pretty active market.
Right. So for buyers out there, that means maybe you don't have to be quite as aggressive as you did last year,
Mm-hmm.
but you still got to be ready to move when you find something you like.
Yeah, for sure. And for sellers, it's still good news your properties are selling in a reasonable time frame.
Okay. That's good to know. Now, what about the value people were getting for their money?
Yeah,
The report mentioned the average price per square foot.
right.
What does that tell us?
Well, in February, that average was $581 per square foot.
Right.
And that's actually a 7% increase from last year.
Wow. So values are definitely increasing.
Yeah, and when you combine that with the slightly higher median sales price year over year, it really points to that underlying value of property in Oceanside continuing to climb.
Right. So whether you're already living there or thinking about buying, that upward trend in price per square foot is a good sign.
Yeah, exactly. It shows the market's strength.
Now, were sellers getting their asking prices?
They were actually getting pretty close.
Okay.
On average, sellers received 99% of their original list price.
Wow.
That means buyers were willing to pay almost the full asking price,
Right.
so it shows there's still strong demand.
So for someone thinking about selling, that sounds like a pretty good situation.
Yeah, you're likely to get very close to what you're asking for.
And for buyers, it means probably not a lot of room to negotiate.
Probably not.
Now, with all this activity, were there even enough houses for sale? Or were buyers fighting over limited options?
It's interesting because there were actually more new listings in February.
Oh, okay.
They had 122 new properties hit the market.
So buyers actually had more to choose from.
Yeah, exactly. Which is good news for them.
Right.
But even with more inventory, things are still selling pretty quickly and at almost full price. So it doesn't seem like the market has swung completely in the buyer's favor.
So it sounds like it's becoming a bit more balanced.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Now, I thought it was really interesting that the report breaks down how different price ranges are performing.
Yeah.
Because that's helpful for our listeners depending on what kind of property they're interested in.
Right.
So let's start at the top. What was happening with the higher end homes?
So in that top 25% of the market, which they call the top quartile,
Okay.
the median price for homes sold, there was $1,240,000.
Wow, so those are the luxury properties.
Yeah, exactly. And those were actually selling the fastest.
Yeah.
The median days on market was just 21 days.
Wow, that's quick.
And they were going for an average of $656 per square foot.
So if you're looking for that high-end property in Oceanside, you got to be ready to act fast.
Yeah, definitely a competitive market for those prime spots.
What about the next level down?
So in the second quartile, the median sale price was $976,969.
Okay.
And those homes were selling in a median of 28 days.
Still pretty quick.
Yeah, and the average price per square foot there was $508.
So still strong demand, but maybe a little less intense than that top tier.
Exactly.
Now, what about the properties right in the middle of the market?
So the third quartile, with a median price of $845,000,
Okay.
they had a median of 32 days on market.
A little bit longer.
Yeah, and the average price per square foot was actually a bit higher here at $543. That could be because of the specific types of homes in that range, or maybe the neighborhoods they're in.
Right. So even within these different price points, there are a lot of variations.
Definitely.
Now, what about the most affordable homes in the market?
So that bottom quartile with a median sale price of $585,000,
Okay.
those homes were taking the longest to sell with a median of 40 days on market.
Okay, so a bit more time to consider things.
Yeah, and the average price per square foot there was $501.
So it seems like that entry-level segment might be a little bit more sensitive to things like interest rates and affordability.
Yeah, it could be that buyers in this segment are just a bit more cautious.
It's fascinating to see how these different parts of the market are behaving so differently.
Yeah, it's not just one story in Oceanside.
Now, beyond the numbers, the report also talks about why Oceanside is such a desirable place to live.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of what's driving this real estate activity.
Absolutely.
It's not just about the houses themselves.
No, it's the whole lifestyle.
So what are some of those factors that make Oceanside so appealing?
Well, first of all, you have that classic Southern California coastal lifestyle.
Right, with the beaches and all that?
Exactly. Miles of beautiful beaches.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, that's a huge draw.
Yeah, I can imagine that's what initially attracts a lot of people.
Yeah, the dream of living by the ocean.
But it sounds like Oceanside has more to offer than just the beach.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What else is there?
Well, they've really revitalized the downtown area in recent years.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, so now you've got all these trendy restaurants and rooftop bars with amazing views.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and there are art galleries and cool boutique hotels.
So it's got that urban energy as well?
Exactly. It's not just a sleepy beach town.
It sounds like it's evolving and becoming more dynamic.
Definitely. And then on top of that, you have all these different neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah, I was reading about that.
Like if you want those hillside views, you've got areas like Fire Mountain, or if you prefer a more walkable, laid-back vibe, there's South Oceanside. They often call it Southo.
I saw that.
So there's really a community for everyone.
That's a big plus for people considering living there.
Yeah, you can find a place that fits your lifestyle.
Now, beyond the beach, what about other opportunities for outdoor activities?
Oh, there's tons.
Okay.
You've got the Oceanside Harbor, which is great for boating, fishing, all sorts of water sports.
Sounds nice.
And if you like biking, there are excellent trails along the Strand.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
And of course, you're close to Camp Pendleton and some beautiful state beaches.
So plenty of options for people who love being outdoors.
Definitely.
It really seems like Oceanside has a lot going for it.
It does.
And all of that is reflected in what we're seeing in the real estate market.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's sum it all up for our listeners.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways from this February 2025 update on the Oceanside market?
Well, the main thing is that we saw a big increase in buyer activity in February, both compared to last year and even to just the month before.
Right, a lot of interest in Oceanside.
Yeah, and while the median sales price dipped a little from January, it's still higher than last year. So that indicates those values are still growing.
And homes are selling faster now than they were at the start of the year.
Right, but not quite as fast as last year.
Okay. And overall property values are looking strong.
Yep, especially when you consider that price per square foot.
And it seems like the higher end of the market is the most competitive right now.
Yeah, those luxury properties are getting snatched up quickly.
So for anyone listening who's interested in Oceanside real estate, it sounds like there's a lot of demand.
Definitely.
Values are generally increasing.
Right.
But the specific experience you have will really depend on what price point you're looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's important to remember that all of this is happening in the context of what we talked about. The fact that Oceanside is this desirable place to live with the beaches and the revitalized downtown and all these different neighborhoods.
Absolutely. All of that plays a role.
So whether you're thinking about buying or selling or investing or just keeping an eye on the market, these insights into Oceanside are really valuable.
Yeah, it's a fascinating market to watch.
And as we've seen, the appeal of Oceanside goes beyond just the numbers.
Right.
It's about that whole lifestyle it offers.
Exactly.
So as you think about these trends, the increased interest from buyers,
Yeah.
the different speeds at which various parts of the market are moving,
Right.
and all the things that make Oceanside attractive, it raises a really interesting question.
What's that?
With all this interest and potential for even more development,
Yeah.
and of course the constant influence of interest rates, how will all of this shape the future of Oceanside's real estate market?
That's the big question.
It's definitely a dynamic situation.
It is.
So something to keep an eye on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll be back with more insights soon.
Looking forward to it.